Scrooge's Christmas Carol, Releasing the Last Chain. Written and illustrated by C. Pippin Lowe. Stave 9, Stressful Deliverance. Recoiling, Scrooge tripped backwards while Noah blew blood through Marley's ghostly form. Crying out in terror, Marley pleaded, "I love you." Noah just hissed another deluge of gore. "I still love you," insisted Marley. But again, Noah's shadowy blood blew through Marley. Spread flat on his back, Scrooge whispered, "Lying facts." Whirling to face his friend, Marley insisted, "I am telling the truth." "Maybe in your head. Speak with your heart, Jacob." "Bloody, I am not going to speak at all." With that, Marley pushed Maxie from his brother's grip, then placed his own arm into Noah's hand. Before anybody could change the situation, Noah dragged his brother's wrist across the barb. As the red fluid sprayed the area, Marley reached across several fence pickets, then dragged his other wrist across a second barb. Splayed across the space of multiple bars, Marley dangled from his ruined wrists. Noah stepped back. "With your heart," advised Scrooge. "I did this to you." Noah just stared at the brother he no longer recognized. With his chin resting upon his chest, Marley cried out, "I stole the money, Noah. I did this to you." Confused, Noah just asked, "Money?" "Pressy and Barclay's shop. Christmas Eve. I betrayed you, Noah." Vacant of caution, Noah thrust his arm into his brother's chest, grabbed the chain imprisoning his heart, then ferociously yanked it free of the ghost. Instantly, Marley dissipated. Holding the chain high while shrieking like an animal, Noah, with intention, threw it at Scrooge. Barely dodging the iron, Scrooge watched as it landed directly behind him. Startled, he jumped from the twitching metal. Marley was nowhere to be found. "Bloody humbug!" Looking in every direction, panic beset Scrooge, for Marley appeared to have disappeared. "Jacob, do not abandon me." "Calm your storm, Ebenezer," Marley said, with his hand inside his chest. "Let me adjust this burden." Moving next to Scrooge, he added, "Frightful experience that was." "It's not going well, is it?" "So much for speaking my heart," groaned Marley. "Would you want some new advice?" "Your last was less than helpful, but I have no solutions. So of course, Ebenezer, how would you calm Noah?" "I would allow the events from the death to dictate the telling of your truth." "The events? Noah lived the events, Ebenezer. Why must I go through that door again?" "Because Noah is stuck within the threshold of that event door. You need to pull him through it. He needs your grasp, your understanding, but he will only absorb it if it's spoken in his mindset." "And if I cannot find the words that fit his mindset, then?" "The key to reaching your brother is to enter his approach, for he is rooted there. Only then can Noah hear your facts, Jacob. Only then will he begin to trust you." "And do you know if this new advice is good advice?" "Ever the doubter, and your remedy, Jacob, is—" After pondering the idea, the ghost admitted, "I fathom your suggestion will not hurt by way of an attempt, so—" Then, without even a moment's passage, Marley dangled upon the hooks facing Noah. While his wrist sprayed a mist of freakish blood throughout the den, Marley lifted his chin from his chest, then bellowed, "The carnage around your lifeless body, coupled with Flora's wails." As Marley searched for words, Noah grabbed him by the throat. Casting a savage glance towards Scrooge, Noah quickly focused upon Marley. Having his younger brother in his grip, Noah breathed into Jacob's face. "I heard you caused that. It was the worst mistake of my life. No, Noah screamed, while tightening his grip on his brother's neck. It was the worst mistake of my life. I crushed your honor, Noah, in every way. You crushed me, screamed Noah, while flinging his head backward, then sideways, and finally thrusting it deep against his brother's face. Snarling, he growled, Honor is the privilege of the aristocrats. I struggle for justice. Justice is for the living, Noah. What you do here is merely protest your injustice. There are no courts, barristers, or even accused here, except yourself. Noah shoved Marley deep into the bars, then grabbed his brother's heart chain. Yanking it backward, he hooked the iron to a third barb, securing his brother in place against the fence. Marley relaxed into his brother's fury. As he dangled off the ground, he lifted his eyes to meet Noah's. Then, staring into his brother's blaze of anger, he calmly stated, There is no change another can do to make you whole again. Noah released his grip on Marley's neck, roared with wrath, then told his truth. You have always been worthless, Jacob. You were everyone's victim, Noah, but mostly yours. Yes, I destroyed you, yet it is you that must save yourself. Words. You speak words without meaning. Then hear these words, Noah. You deserve release from this horror, but you cling to it. I adhere to the power within my existence. And yet this den has caused you to forget your task of outreach. What was that? Noah paused to search his memory, then said, I never made one. No, you are here, so you made one. Remember it? I want revenge. Then kill me into infinity, yet justice will still only be an illusion for you. Marley waited for his brother's thought, but when none was offered, he emphasized, You must release your victimizers, not for their benefit, but because you deserve deliverance from their actions. I deserve revenge. Indeed, the greatest revenge I can offer you is to request instant transmogrification. You may gain some satisfaction by my elimination, yet justice will still not be owned by you through such an action. Noah clapped his hand over Marley's mouth. Say another thought, and I will steal your heart chain from you. Then you will be lost in an oblivion that instant transmogrification can never save you from. Terrified, Marley remained as still as what he was, dead, while Noah's eyes glared through the fright of his brother's face. Growing repulsed by the reflection of caring that stared back, Noah became infuriated. As he aggressively pressed his hand over his brother's mouth, Marley responded by kissing the seizing palm. Without any delay, Noah ripped the lips from Marley's face. Perplexed, he backed away with the quivering mass of ghostly flesh evaporating from his hand. Marley, for his part, remained stoic. As one tear simultaneously dropped from each brother's cheek, Noah lunged back at Marley. Why did you do this to me? I needed the money to become Ebenezer's partner, he said, with his head pointing towards Scrooge. Noah moved towards Scrooge. You took the money. I did not know it was yours. Backing away from Noah, Scrooge felt the urge to escape, but to where? So, it is you that did this, Noah said, descending upon Scrooge. Before Scrooge could speak to his defense, Noah attacked him. Grabbing him by the throat, he flung Scrooge across the room, with muscles generally absent of a spirit. Hitting the den's wall, Scrooge slowly sank to the ground. Before he could come to a sitting position, Noah was upon him again, this time with a desire to cause pain. Why are you here? You do not deserve life. With that, he lifted Scrooge by the neck off the ground. Scrooge tightened every muscle as he struggled for freedom. With ferocity, Noah pressed Scrooge's nape flat against the wall, which caused him to lose consciousness. As Scrooge went limp, Noah just pushed harder. Dangling from the fence, Marley attempted to free himself. Ripping each wrist from its hook, he flapped back and forth as the hook binding his chain refused to bend. "Noah, stop!" Within the next moment, as if lightning had struck the den, Apurto stood between Noah and Scrooge. Between his jaws swung Noah's forearm, fingers pumping in and out with the intention of seizing anything it could with rage. Noah stared at the location of his now missing arm. The shock of it stunned the ghost into an emotional collapse. As he closed his eyes, then began to crumble downward, Marley cried out, "Stay with me, Noah," and then to Apurto he instructed, "Do not swallow my brother's arm." Noah opened his eyes, and then instantly gave chase to Apurto. "Give it back, you monster!" Running mere inches behind the animal, Noah grabbed at but missed the dodging creature. As Noah continued to chase Apurto, Marley called to Scrooge, "You still with me, Ebenezer?" Scrooge steadied himself, then replied, "Well enough, considering the force of the attack. Get me off this hook before Noah returns." Taking a few steps forward, Scrooge stood in front of his dangling friend. As Scrooge pondered the method of Marley's release, Apurto finally dropped Noah's arm. At first, Scrooge did what any person would do to free a human, just lift him up and over the fence's barb. However, Marley was not a human, for when Scrooge grabbed Marley's arm, his hands passed right through the spirit. "Grab the chain," instructed Marley. "You mean put my hand inside of your chest?" "Ebenezer, I have been inside of your entire body. Just reach in, quick, before Noah returns." As Scrooge reluctantly gripped the semi-solid ring attached to Marley's heart, Noah seized the human shoulder, and then within the next moment, all three shifted. Marley dropped from his bondage as Scrooge pulled free of the menacing grasp, and Noah just stood bewildered, wondering who to harm. Warily, Marley wrapped himself around Noah. With torsos intertwined, Noah's anger lessened. Comforted in his brother's calming, Marley clung fast to the sensation of their shared space. Absorbing the intensity within their embrace, Marley whispered into Noah's ear, "Tell me your task of outreach." Noah tensed the mass of his spirit, pulled away from his brother's hold, then said, "Flora, only Flora." "That is a big enough task." Marley paused, then asked, "Are you ready to work that task, or would you rather kill me again?" "You deserve it," Noah smirked. "I did earn it," agreed Marley. "However, Flora needs us." "I do not need you," Noah turned toward Scrooge, then said, "I choose Ebenezer, but you, baby brother, I will never trust." "I will then follow behind you two." "No, you will walk in front of us." The mutual agreement overtook the two with silence until Scrooge asked, "So, how do we leave this den?" "We do not leave. It leaves us." Scrooge rumpled his forehead, trying to figure out what that meant. At first came the thought that they were in a dream. He was wondering whether waking was an option when Marley stretched his arms to a length that would encircle the three of them. As Marley's arms bundled the trio into one being, the den began to grow dark, and together they were lifted from the ground. The rising movement did not give the sensation of floating, but instead the awareness of falling. Upward, they fell at a speed increasing beyond gravity's effect. With a growing blackness darker than that at the point, Scrooge began to tremble. As he twitched with terror, Noah whispered to him, "Your fear is hurting me." "Ebenezer, you do not need to fear anything in transmography. Apurto has proven that, explained Marley. Apurto, murmured Scrooge. Yes. With that understanding, he cautiously relaxed. Furiously falling upward, the tether of Marley's arms loosened as the three began to spin. Tighter and tighter, they whirled within their shrinking space. Like a maelstrom, the circular force started to twist the trio. Scrooge moaned as his form rotated around itself more than survival could permit. While swirling, Marley whispered into Noah's ear, "There isn't enough space for the three of us." Noah ignored his brother with a grunt, so Marley said, "We have to both move into Scrooge." "Do we? Why?" "Because I want to keep him alive. Will you help, or do you hate me so much you will allow Ebenezer to perish?" Without another moment, Noah pushed deep into Scrooge, leaving a gap where his brother's arms had previously embraced the three into one. Marley followed Noah into Scrooge's body. As the ghosts disappeared into Scrooge, the human form continued its contortions. While feet and head rotated at different speeds, Scrooge screamed in pain as he passed out from the stress. As the three spun at the speed of a vortex, both Marley and Noah tried to control Scrooge's limp body. Their spiraling bore a hole in the road through which they entered. Scrooge, now deformed, collapsed. Without even touching him, Noah knew Scrooge was dead. Marley, fearing the truth, did everything he could to shake his friend back to life, yet he had no power. Scrooge lay twisted upon the road, with blood trickling from his ears, nose, and mouth. His open eyes glared without focus upon his friends. As Marley pulled Scrooge into his lap, he succumbed to his failure with sobs of grief. Rocking as he wept, Marley barely noticed Apurto's breath upon his neck. Quietly, the beast growled, "Yai, yai." Anxiety exploded from Marley as he grabbed the mangled corpse of his friend. "No, never. I will not allow you to vanquish Ebenezer." "Ya, ya," Apurto roared as he pushed through Marley, then settled upon Scrooge's crushed flesh. Marley pounced upon Apurto. "I said never." As the two struggled for control of the dead human, Noah lost focus, then began to walk toward the pool of broken spirits. Disoriented, Marley called to Noah, "We have to save." The pause in combat gave Apurto the concentrated strength to shove Marley from Scrooge. While Marley rolled from the conflict, Noah aimlessly walked the road as Apurto stood on all fours over Scrooge. Arching his back, Apurto began to heave his stomach in and out. The section within his gut forced bile into his throat. Without warning, Apurto spewed onto Scrooge the murky acceptance created from consumed crater skulls. The liquid flowed into Scrooge's facial openings. As joyous, musical tones drifted above the evaporating acceptance, Scrooge began to jerk, and then the excruciations commenced. Torturous screams shrieked throughout transmography. With each flicker of motion, Scrooge voiced an unbearable agony. "Let it be," he gasped between howls. Apurto continued to vomit acceptance upon Scrooge as he began to push the creature from him. "This pain! Beast, leave me!" Apurto stopped his eruptions of acceptance. While Scrooge wiggled to be released from the animal, Apurto collapsed. Pinned beneath the brute, Scrooge's only available movement was that of his deafening panic. While Noah continued to wander the road, Jacob watched the two wrapped in survival. Slowly, each of Apurto's stripes developed a glow brighter than light. The smallest stripes on both his shoulders and tail began the illumination. Each adjoining stripe thereafter continued to add to the radiance. Within an instant, Apurto was a mass of bright warmth. This quieted Scrooge, which helped him to relax into the healing. At first, the energy was forced upon Scrooge, But once recognized for what it was, Scrooge began to pull the healing from Apurto. As the drain of energy finished reviving Scrooge, Apurto weakened. While Scrooge began to rise to his feet, he and Marley watched as Apurto's body began to display the same twists and contortions that had ended Scrooge. Leaning over his deceased rescuer, Scrooge asked, "Why did he do this?" "I know not the mind of an animal, Ebenezer, but he was the caretaker." "How do we save him?" Before the question could be solved, a deafening clap resounded throughout transmography. And then a thunderous command from Teint was voiced. "Apurto, here, now." The force within the directive rang so loud that trees within the fields of destructive compulsions began to throw off their spikes. As the trees' spears flew across the road, both Marley and Scrooge attempted to dodge their danger, while Noah appeared to be unaware of everything. Dozens of thorns shot into them all. Marley knew it was coming, so only worked to protect Scrooge, whereas Noah just groaned when each spike flew through him. Scrooge was assaulted by 3 weapons of the tree, but none of them harmed him. Instead, they passed through as if he, too, were made of spirit. "Why are you not bloody?" asked Marley as he inspected each entrance and exit hole the spikes made. Out of each exit hole dripped 1 drop of blood. Marley stepped back from Scrooge, eyed him up and down, then declared, "You are different now." "I feel the same." "Yet your skin is no longer a fleshy color, but it shines of a purplish hue." "Shines?" "I guess it is more of a lavender color." "My coloring probably does not matter, but Apurto's life, it does." As the two turned to where the corpse should be lying on the road, nothing remained. "Where did he go?" "With Teint? I don't know, Ebenezer. I am only glad he saved you." "No, I am not happy with this exchange, Jacob." "But maybe he is." "Could I have meant to be erased from all knowledge while here?" "Well, you are not out of here yet, and Apurto does not appear to be available to you in the future, so maybe you are meant for total destruction. However, I'm not going to let it happen to you, Ebenezer." "What is your say in this, Jacob?" Marley thought about the question, then answered, "I have none, but I am determined to be good to my word." "Then let's go find out what is wrong with Noah." As they walked, silence seized their thoughts. Scrooge opened his mouth to speak, but the fog in his mind quieted his tongue. Marley, for his part, surrendered to a sense of uneasiness. Although the road through the fields of destructive compulsions appeared to be so vast, almost to the point of near endlessness, Marley was able to instantly locate Noah. As they approached him, Scrooge noticed an oddity. "Why is he not moving?" "It appears Noah is moving like the minute hand of a clock, but he still does stir," assured Marley. As they drew closer to the motionless Noah, Marley thundered, "This is that dratted Alito's curse again." "I thought we got Noah beyond that in the den." "We did free his brain's mind, but the heart's mind, its affliction still lingers." "More than one mind?" "In truth, the heart's thoughts reveal more to the brain than does the brain ever convey to the heart." Pausing, so to gain the emphasis needed for what he must next ask of Scrooge, Marley finally said, "I cannot bring Noah back by myself. This curse is beyond my powers. But together, us together, we can reconnect his mind's system." "So, at last, you need me." "Ebenezer, you have no idea how valuable you are. Noah just needs you to give him a bit more of your worth." "If I am able." With concern, they approached the near motionless Noah. The next action would either free him or send him back to the den. I need you, Ebenezer, to flow acceptance into the back of Noah while I bring him into our moment. Acceptance? Am I dead? You do seem changed, but no, you still live, Ebenezer. How can I then deliver acceptance to Noah? Death and acceptance are not connected by way of the transmogrification process. Acceptance is created from the finest human qualities. Scrooge shook his head from side to side and mumbled, Apurto, as he remembered having just been drenched in Apurto's vomited acceptance. Sensing his friend's confusion, Marley clarified. Apurto's acceptance was not made up of liquefied skulls. His spray of acceptance was compressed healing. It seems his body was able to complete the purification. I guess that is good news for those in the crater, but only if they have not already asked for instant transmogrification. I have no such bodily powers of transforming my stomach contents into healing, so how can I create acceptance? Ebenezer, every being possesses the ability for emotional awakening. It is the Creator's gift and humanity's obligation. Obligation? In the eyes of the infinite consciousness, awakening love through sacred experiences, it is our only requirement. Marley paused, stared into Scrooge's eyes, then asked, Who do you love most, Ebenezer? Nobody. Of course you love. The quality reeks within your personality. Quite truthfully, Jacob, I don't love others. This is mysterious to me, Ebenezer. Explain your good deeds without love. I loved money. Wealth was my worth. However, after your first Christmas Eve visit, I was thrilled to just be alive. So, it is gratitude in your spirit, not love. Perfect. Perfect. Love is the easiest quality for people to activate because it is passed from being to being. However, gratitude is the quality or energy force that passes directly from a person to the infinite consciousness. This actually makes sense to me, Jacob. Because of this quality, gratitude has a power greater than that of love, but it is not as formidable as is joy. Smiling at Scrooge, Marley quipped, My friend, it appears you have almost made it into your second childhood. Scrooge wanted to grin, but the concept of a second childhood created a reflexive frown. I'm having a difficult time understanding how a childlike power is going to save Noah. Don't take on that burden, Ebenezer. Just be grateful there is a way. It seems that is what I have become good at, being grateful. I need you to stand behind Noah. As Scrooge did as instructed, Marley continued. Put your left hand over your own heart, and then extend the right arm out, so that it nearly touches Noah's back. Scrooge did as instructed, then Marley said, Close your eyes, Ebenezer. Lower your head. Now, fill your mind with the remembrance of what it felt like to be given a second chance at life. Caress, then amplify that wonder. Once it cannot be stopped, allow the charge to flow. As Scrooge transferred the sensation of his thoughts to his chest, a shiver of exhilaration took control. With his eyes closed, he felt a surge of warmth within his palm. While the energy needed to strengthen Noah began to gush toward the ghost's back, Jacob set himself in front of his brother. Abruptly, he transformed into a woman as tall, yet more elegant, as was either of the Marley brothers. Your seraphic triumph has arrived, Noah. Noah heard the declaration, yet made no acknowledgement of the thought. Scrooge, through closed eyes, sensed the warmth of his mental concentration flowing from his hand into Noah. Filling the ghost's beating organ with gratitude, it soon began to glow. Yet, instead of illuminating the entire thinking structure, the energy began to rebound back into Scrooge's palm. "Push harder, Ebenezer," demanded the woman facing Noah. "The heart is full of radiance." Yet, the unmanly one stepped closer to Noah, placed their right hand upon the center of the motionless chest, then positioned the left hand upon the top of Noah's head. Closing her eyes, the woman pulled the left hand upward. Light exploded into Noah's mind, illuminating the whole of his substance. However, he made no movement to realize his body's change. "You are my firstborn." With this statement, Noah raised his head, then whispered, "Mum." "Open your eyes, my son." Noah obeyed in silence as the matriarch continued. "You have suffered. You still suffer. Yet your seraphic triumph has arrived." "Sarah, what?" asked Noah. "The ability to become your sacred legacy." "I want justice," bellowed Noah. "There are no magistrates here." As Scrooge's power freely flowed into the stilled spirit, the mother imitator continued to explain. "All who travel the road gain restoration. Even Alito's duo spirit wallowing at the bottom of the crater will eventually transform. He may never become acceptance, but his curse will dissipate once he is able to escape his self-entrapment." Pausing to add emphasis, she said, "Unfortunately, there always seems to be a new injustice to take its place." All Noah heard from the spirit before him was the word no. He lowered his head and began to shake. As tears of grief and confusion started to surge, both Marley, as the mother spirit, and Scrooge pulled their own emotions inward. Scrooge, not wanting to break his heart connection with Noah, resisted the temptation to clear the collected moisture from his eyes. The mother tried to explain again. "When nature harms a person, can the law restore them? Does the bite from an animal require the court's judgment? No, of course not. It is only the human-to-human injury that screams for justice. Lift up your head, Noah, for the power of your remake is within." Noah began to bawl. While his dry tears started to drop, the sounds of his wailing echoed throughout the road. Again, the mother spirit stepped next to Noah, wrapped her arms around him, kissed him on the lips, then encouraged. "Yes, weep away your self-doubt, my son." As the two clung to their embrace, the energy of Scrooge's gratitude finally broke through Noah's despair. Noah, while still confused, returned Marley's kiss. Shared tears dropped between them, and then Jacob lost control of the mother image. Just as Jacob changed back, Noah realized the deception, then pushed his brother away. "You are not Mum. Your fraud is upon me again." An awkward silence developed between the three when Scrooge finally realized the worth of his understanding about the brothers' struggle. Within the strength of his new awareness, he calmly said, "No, Noah, Jacob is pure in heart for your redemption." With fury, Noah spun around to confront Scrooge, but once he felt the mildness within Scrooge's demeanor, he only replied, "I still hurt." Now confident as to why Marley was in need of him, Scrooge spoke his wisdom. "And you may, always. But it will lessen once you integrate the strength of the experience into your existence." "What strength is that, Ebenezer?" Both Noah and Jacob were curious to know Scrooge's mind, yet Scrooge, now realizing his worth within transmography, still struggled to find the wisest words. "You have already placed a boundary upon Jacob that will empower you, Noah." "I know of no boundary," insisted Noah. "Yet I know the boundary," exclaimed Marley. "Noah, You have demanded that I walk in front of you on the road. I am not sure how that will reinforce you, but it must. I need my traitor visible. Yes, it strengthens your security to demand that of Jacob, but that is only one lesson you need to merge into your spirit, said Scrooge. What are the others? I am unsure of what you need, Noah, but reflection will help to bring you harmony. All I want to reflect upon is Flora. That is my task of outreach as well, said Marley. Then stay at least a furlong in front of us, Jacob. That will cause Ebenezer to lose his ability to stand up. Noah focused upon his brother, then slowly ordered, I will be his spirit equalizer. Ebenezer and I will stay here as you establish the required distance between us. Now be on your way, cowardly brother. Marley looked back several times as he moved 1 furlong, and then 2 furlongs ahead of his brother. Once the distance that Noah needed was achieved, he said to Scrooge, Now, I want you to walk in front of me too. Have I harmed you? Have you? Asked Noah, but before Scrooge could reply, he added, No, I just want to figure out at what distance you become vulnerable. Oh, that's easy, said Scrooge, as he walked to a location, stopped to look back at Noah, then took 1 further step. Scrooge began to weaken, with his knees bending. Faltering, his legs wobbled, but instead of toppling him, they shifted until control was regained. Bewildered, Scrooge took 3 more steps away from Noah, and when he remained upright, asked, Are you sure I still live? Well, you haven't died. Comforting, Noah, comforting. The 2 strangers, connected by a rogue, began to walk toward the pool of broken spirits. Neither knew how to initiate the conversation both desired. Walking in silence, the pair blurted in concurrence, Have you recovered? Smiling, then laughing, each replied, Maybe. This word in unison brought tears to their guffaw. After settling his laughter, Scrooge said, I am well enough to continue. Me, I still struggle with a memory, admitted Noah. Sighing, he proceeded to explain, When I was in my chamber, at the plane of violence, the same event from my childhood repeated itself hundreds of times. I could never absolve it, but I did eventually absorb it. Was it some wickedness that befell you? No, far from it. It was just an event that sparked a thought. Pausing, so to develop clarification, Noah finally confessed. You are going to think this foolish, but when walking in a field, I stepped right on top of a huge anthill. Without wanting to stifle the conversation, Scrooge said, I don't find that to be unique. I've probably crushed 1,000 ants without even knowing I did it. That is part of the point. All creatures harm without knowing it. What is food if not death to something? Yeah, of course. So, why did dead ants cause you such contemplation? It was their destiny, the casual fate of the ants being killed and scattered from outside their existence. Is that how you view your own demise? Yes, and no. Events are always caused but are not always malicious. That is what I had to figure out in the chamber. So, you do not think what Jacob did to you was hateful? He was merely an ant running from the edge of the law's shoe. I, on the other hand, was directly under the shoe. Yes, but Jacob brought the shoe to the anthill. However, it was the shoe that stepped upon me, not Jacob. My brother has guilt, but not for my actual death. So, eventually you will forgive him. I already have. Pausing to emphasize his decision, Noah said, but I will never trust him again. I don't know if I trust him either. And yet, you are here. Not knowing how to defend his situation, Scrooge quipped, I assume stranger things have happened. Really? When? The question brought a temporary end to the conversation, as Scrooge could not think of an answer. Together, the pair watched Marley approach the pool. As the metal poles protruding from the pool continuously sparked, multiples of spirits awakened from their sleep. Marley began to float over the pool. He took extra care to avoid the rising spirits, sparking poles, and the surface of the tear-filled pool. Noah, I've been thinking about your story of stepping on the ants, and I am confused about something, said Scrooge. Noah looked upon Scrooge, then replied, Well, we can't have that. Transmography is all about gaining personal clarification. So, tell me your head-scratcher, Ebenezer. I do not want to belittle your experience, but I cannot understand why you would relive it over and over. Scrooge paused, breathed deeply, then said, I mean, things that play over and over in my memory are dramatic, if not outright traumatic. Yes, that is true. So, how was stepping on ants traumatic? I mean, you were barefoot, or did they swarm you? No. Noah did not want to explain the aftermath, for it seemed to linger within him as shame. Scrooge, sensing attention, gently placed his hand upon Noah's ethereal forearm, then said, My curiosity has no honor. Forgive me for asking. Curiosity has no honor? Noah paused, then said, No, Ebenezer. Only things that harm are without honor. Your curiosity has wisdom. He stopped his forward motion, lowered his head, then confessed. I rampaged. That is when my spirit of anger was created. Noah began to shake with hard jerks. I turned that anthill into a graveyard. I was furious. Noah, stop. Do not continue your torment. Noah continued trembling as he attempted to calm Scrooge with his disjointed words. This has been resolved, yet hindsight melts more ice. This comment baffled Scrooge into silence, for the metaphor was peculiar. While the two continued moving in intervals, Noah, after several steps, finally announced, My tension is relaxing. Pausing to gain emotional strength, he confessed, My spirit of anger manifested after that action of ant rage. However, thoughts about animals developed earlier within me. Jacob told me about your cat killing the snake. It was that snake's death that made me think and think and think. Jacob said it brought your own mortality into view for you. Noah just laughed as he corrected the idea. Jacob would think that. He loves animals, but I don't. Watching his feet as they walked the road, he disclosed, The death of that snake made me realize how insignificant all animals are, even humans. Humans? Do you now view that as an untruthful conclusion? I would if it was, Ebenezer, but no. I had the blessings from another human, my wife, that helped me. However, I never released the idea that all life is unimportant. Bit of a paradox, isn't that? Paradoxes are part of the human condition. I think humans are just here to see if we can handle them, or maybe to see how we handle them. Surely you jest about that. Only in the sense that I have no answers for any of the social puzzles. Noah paused, then said, I do know that Flora's spirit of kindness softened my spirit of anger. Noah shook his head back and forth, then concluded, However, my malicious spirit exploded with madness after death. Scrooge scratched the back of his head, then asked, Do people take on both positive and negative spirits? Of course, but there are few individuals that die with only positive spirits. Noah looked out over the approaching pool of broken spirits and said, all within transmography, but especially those that sleep within the pool, possess spirits of worth. How do positive spirits mogrify? Do they even enter transmography? I have never viewed an already purified spirit within transmography. To my knowledge, none travel anywhere here. Together, their focus turned toward Marley, who was busying himself at dodging the spirits rising from the pool. Having gained his composure, Noah called across the pool. Jacob, have you found Flora? Marley called back, yet from across the road, within the dam of disconnected parts, sounds of clashing limbs muffled his brother's words. Noah gestured his brother to the pool's edge. Have you found Flora? She sleeps deeply. What do you mean? Asked Noah. Yes. Settling back onto the road, Marley completed Noah's thought. Coss Acceptance has encased her. We have to save her. Quick, Jacob, we need to pull her to shore. The encasement has already grown too large. I cannot move her by myself. How can I help you? Asked Scrooge. With my fleshiness, I am probably the strongest among us. Without a doubt, your brawn will be needed. However, the dangers of the pool's mechanics will restrict all of our actions. Then, without even taking a breath, Marley added, and I know the pool looks shallow, but don't even think about wading out to her. It does seem like an option. I'm fairly certain I can maneuver around those that sleep. Pointing to the surface of the pool, Marley warned, if you get even one drop of the pool's liquid on your skin, it will break your heart, Ebenezer, and I am not even going to tell you about the damage those poles can cause while standing in the pool. The constant spray of sparks lit up the pool. While the three stood at the edge, explosive lightning bolts cracked in rhythm to the clashing limbs from the dam. As sounds combined around them, it created an echo chamber of discordance. Scrooge asked, Is there something we can float on? Well, Noah and I can just float, said Marley, but even combined, our mass has little strength. Yet, this is dire. We need to retrieve Flora before there is another Coss release, which will cage her more deeply to her grief. I thought Coss Acceptance revives the sleeping. Yes, but only for those that have spirits within them that need mogrification. I'm not understanding this. This is the rarest of happenings, Ebenezer, for it requires the purest heart which has developed only spirits of worth. How unique is that on earth? Marley did not wait for a response before he added, Often individuals live nearly angelic lives, yet they still need mogrification. Mums and dads' spirits usually linger, and the parents' energy forces are the hardest to alter during life. I'm still not understanding why Flora is in such a state. She did only one thing against the infinite consciousness. She ended her own life, and couple that with the life inside of her. Marley lowered his head, for he knew that it was he that created the path to Flora's demise. Flora had so much charity toward the sick. She created a neighborhood wise woman organization. She was gifted in that way herself, but she brought into existence what was so overlooked. Marley lifted his head, pointed to Flora's encased form within the pool, and confessed, If I hadn't caused this, Flora would have immediately gone to the infinite consciousness after death. Her least spirit was one of courage, while the greatest spirit radiated peace. Crying out, Marley exclaimed, But I shattered that peace. Baffled, Scrooge calmly asked, So, why hasn't Coss Acceptance awakened her? It only compounds the grief of her death. She is so entombed that even Coss Acceptance cannot calm her broken spirit. Every element of her death has her trapped within a memory loop. The cracking of the ice, the freezing water of the Thames, and the kicking within the womb refuses to release her. Without warning, a swoop of Coss overtook the pool. Sparks from the metal poles created a suction which could only be overcome by the release of acceptance. As the Coss vomited, they lifted away from the pool. Both Marley and Scrooge began to smile from the floating mist. If the acceptance affected Noah, it was not detectable, for he continued to pace the shoreline. At least a dozen inanimate floaters began to lift off the pool's surface. Each split into their various spirits. Then, without exception, they all moved toward the mog of that spirit's need. The Coss Acceptance that rained down upon Flora only thickened the shell around her. "So, let me absorb this," said Scrooge. "Her goodness in life was so tragically ended that it caused the emotional preservation of the death event itself. And, this is the part I still do not understand, it's the idea that only an innocent will not react to Coss Acceptance. Jacob, why is that?" "Think about her dilemma, Ebenezer. Here is this wonderful being who is pummeled by her circumstances. Her last move is her worst move, and as she is dying, what does she do?" Marley paused for the effect of silence, then answered his own question. "She blames the infinite consciousness." Again, a silence for effect came over Marley. Looking out over the pool, he finally explained, "Flora rejected the relief that acceptance gives. Only our task of outreach can may help her." "What if we fail?" "Noah would never adapt." "So, how do we triumph?" "I am without ideas." Noah stepped between Marley and Scrooge, then announced, "I have the method." Abruptly he turned, then beckoned to them. "Follow me." As the three of them walked to the edge of the dam of disconnected parts, a mountainous quantity of arms and legs fidgeted, and it was not playful. Feet viciously kicked other limbs away, while arms grabbed up appendages, then threw them out of everyone's view. The interaction was nothing if not chaos. The whole scene, unlike any other in transmography, sent a fearsome dread throughout Scrooge's form. "Scrooge, you are going to have to be the group's muscle," announced Noah. "I'm about 30 years too late on that one, Noah, but I'm here to help." Noah smiled at Scrooge's warmth, then teased, "We will try not to exploit you." "What can I do? I have some brawn too," said Marley. Again, Noah smiled, but this time it turned into a cackle. "Baby brother, you may have been strong when you were scooping horse dung, but now you just sort of smell like dung." Marley shook his head back and forth. He knew he deserved this kind of harassment, but it hurt. He wondered what he would have to do to end Noah's rejection. However, contemplation was not the duty of the moment, so he simply sighed and then waited for instructions. "We need to gather up 20, maybe 30 arms. Do you think you can do that, Ebenezer?" "No, I don't think so." Confused, Noah asked, "You do want to help?" "Without hesitation. Yet those claws have already trapped me once. If not for Apurto... Apurto." Scrooge's voice dwindled, while he just gulped air in the effort to articulate his angst. "Will you at least try it? Only if you are prepared to save me when I become ensnared. Thank you, Ebenezer. Your strength is needed, for neither Jacob nor I have the power to dislodge one, let alone dozens of limbs." Noah put his hand on Scrooge's shoulder, then gave the order. "I will go with you. Let's see if we can dodge those spindly projections." Together, as they stepped from the road, Noah yelled back to Marley, "We will toss you the bones. Do you think you have the integrity to stack them?" "There is no element of honesty involved in stacking anything, Noah," Marley fumed. Knowing his taunts had bothered his little brother, Noah mocked, Well then, you should be able to stack beyond the height of the crater, especially since you avoided the same honor as those that dwell within the lake of flames." Marley just snorted air as his brother and best friend entered the dam of disconnected parts. His concern for his brother's situation was waning with every utterance of contempt he received, and yet he would not allow himself the reasoning of a victim. While he watched the two step into the clash of limbs, he wondered if his brother would ever treat him as family again. Noah walked in front of Scrooge so as to kick any menacing structure from the path. As Scrooge followed, exploring fingers attempted to capture his ankles. The touch stimulated shivers within him, but passed through without any hindrance to his legs. "Here, this arm seems long enough," Noah said, pointing to a flexing hand. He attempted to pull it from the pile, but like ice on a street, the stability between ghostly forms could not be created. Scrooge stepped in front of Noah, grabbed the arm, and with almost no effort, freed it. "Now, what do I do?" "Do not move even a bit," said Noah, as he received the extremity, then threw it toward his brother. Not expecting the toss, the bone passed right through Marley, then hit a sleeper within the pool. "Jacob, we are not doing this so you can watch these bones sink to the bottom of the pool. You have one job, and you cannot even do that, Jacob Coll. Stop calling me by my middle name, and do not just throw things at me, Noah. Do you think maybe you could have the forethought to warn me first?" With contempt for his brother, Noah said, "Maybe I should just drop the Jacob and call you Coll from now on." "I do not like this arguing," said Scrooge. "And I do not like that boy," said Noah, pointing to his brother. Marley just endured. His heart hurt, yet his mind understood. Scrooge's words did seem to quiet the brothers' tension. The three worked in silence to gather up the cast-off bones from the crater. The chore proved itself to be difficult, for the ghost's lack of substance kept causing misplacements. Finally, a huge pile of arm bones was collected and stacked along the shore of the pool. This all happened without any mishaps for Scrooge. As they began to walk across the road to Jacob, Scrooge asked Noah, "You say you have forgiven Jacob, yet you remain so hostile toward him. What would Jacob have to do to gain your grace? Am I responsible for another's grace? Would not your focus be better served for yourself away from Jacob's anger?" "Yes, but how do I escape? I mean, he's right there," he said, pointing to Jacob. "What did I do now?" moaned Jacob. See, Ebenezer, what I have to put up with." With a glare that tossed knives through Jacob, Noah said, "It's not what you did a memory ago. It's what you did during our time of seasons." "I do know that, Noah. What I don't know is what I have to do to end this torment." "Torment? It was I that was tormented. Never, never act as if you are the victim, you pitiful creature." "Will my asking for instant transmogrification end at least your torment?" Noah smiled at the thought, but his greater need took control. "No, I may want your help to save Flora." Pausing, he sniped, "But Scrooge is probably the only one I will need." "I may not be able to stop this, but I don't want to be part of it either," said Scrooge. "I want to help Flora before another Coss release arrives." "Undoubtedly. Let's connect the arms." Both Marley and Scrooge stared at the pile of limbs before them. Then Marley braved the obvious question. "How?" "Fingers on elbows." Noah realized he had not brought the needed imagery into view, so slowly explained, "Take one hand, have it grip the elbow of the next arm, and then we can merely repeat, connecting limbs until they will reach Flora." "What if one hand lets go of an elbow?" Noah just waved his hand over the dam, then replied, "We have all the resources we will ever need." The process of getting the hands to grab hold of anything seemed to be almost their purpose for existence. Once joined, the fingers became rigid, nearly unable to part. The lengthening continued until the arms could reach Flora. By this time, it became obvious what the plan was, so only positioning was communicated between the three. With the elongated arm in tow, Noah floated out to Flora. Both Scrooge and Marley held up the last elbow from the road. As fingers flexed in and out, Noah linked the hand to the only location where hardened Coss Acceptance was absent, the centre back of her dress's collar. As he attached the fingers, a previously trapped amount of acceptance cascaded down the slope of her nape. "Scrooge, the hand is joined. Now gently pull as I guide her around the others." The three worked together as if they were a team, coordinating pulls while dodging the other sleeping spirits. As the pole of limbs began to extend much further behind Scrooge and Marley, Flora's cocoon coasted to the edge of the shore. Jumping to the ground, Noah ordered, "Jacob, dry the tears from her encasement." Looking straight at Scrooge, he clarified the instructions. "Stand clear, Ebenezer. That moisture holds emotions, and coming from the pool, none of them are pleasant." Once dried and turned onto her back, Noah looked through the acceptance into the face of his heart's passion. The tenderness he felt at the sight of her brought tears to his eyes. Wiping his forearm across his face, he gently kissed her lips. The covering of acceptance dulled the feeling between the flesh. Marley asked, "How do we free her?" "That, my supposedly genius baby brother, requires what you do not possess, warmth. But I do possess the desire, so what do we do now, big brother?" "Please, not again," protested Scrooge. The brothers both focused upon Scrooge. Then Marley presented an idea. "If heat is going to revive Flora, I think Scrooge should hug her since he is the warmest. You and I, Noah, will attempt to seal his heat against the acceptance. Maybe that will melt it away." "Maybe," agreed Noah. "You want me to hug her?" gulped Scrooge. "I think it may be your job since heat is needed." So, without further dialogue, the three attempted Marley's idea. However, it did not work, for it was not heat, but passion that would raise Flora. Once the first idea failed, Noah walked around and around Flora's sleeping form, in hopes of locating a crack big enough to force open. Frustration was his reward. By the time Noah sat upon the shoreline, next to his brother and Scrooge, melancholy controlled the mood. With Flora lying next to them, yet being no closer than the North Star, he removed from his pocket the quartz point she had given him. Though nothing made Newgate acceptable, the crystal had been the only thing that empowered his hope. Even when sentenced to death, the love her crystal held sustained his courage to face the future. With each loving impression, Noah's inner glow of light began to flow through the crystal's point. As his tears fell upon the crystal, rainbow colors exploded from the one drop of ghostly sorrow that attached itself to the point's tip. Through the droplet, each speck of inner dust that had settled upon the point during its growth reflected an entire rainbow into transmography. As hundreds of colored spectrums surrounded Noah, their inspiration caused him to jump up, place the crystal on Flora's chest, then, with both hands pressed down hard. He did not know what he was doing, but it just felt right. Nothing seemed to happen until Noah intuitively closed his eyes, calmed his thoughts, then watched the joyous memories of his life with Flora play out within his mind. Everything, from the delights of the ballroom to the bedroom, took control. Passion within Noah began to swell. Emotions turned the crystal warm, then hot. As remembrances passed through the quartz, it began to penetrate the crusted Coss Acceptance. Yet, the probing of the crystal only dissolved the acceptance when certain thoughts were generated, certain carnal thoughts. Lovemaking within their marital bedroom had always been kind, playful, but most of all passionate, with lingering kisses. Noah became so consumed by the thought of their shared sensuality that when the entire covering of Coss Acceptance, without warning, released itself, he reflexively dropped the crystal onto Flora's stomach. As he reached down to recover the quartz, Flora grabbed it from him. Holding the point upright against her womb, the crystal began to hum in rhythms of harmonic tones. Slowly vibrating images of a baby began to float next to the 6 triangular faces of the point. Each of the 6 infants glowed a different color of the rainbow. Mesmerized by these developing children, Noah exclaimed, "It's the daughter I was hoping for." Bewildered, Flora countered with, "No, it's my son." Together, each saw their desired child in substance, yet both were unsure about the truth of their vision. "Ebenezer," said Noah, "do we have a boy or a girl?" Scrooge looked upon the 6 images, hoping to discover a distinction, other than color, between them. When none could be detected, he simply gave Flora her wish. "It's a boy." Upon the declaration of gender, the 6 infants combined above the crystal's point into one giggling boy. Noah picked the child up, held him to his chest, then, while kissing his son's forehead, declared with joy, "Here is my legacy." Flora, filled with her own euphoria, joined the family. Together, through the pull of her goodness, the 3 felt a summons from the abyss. The infinite consciousness is calling for mogrification. This urgent behest commanded action. Then, without warning, as the 3 moved toward the abyss of final transmography, an explosion of multicolored acceptance transformed them. Rainbows of acceptance spread throughout transmography, which in turn created a gaiety within all of the mogs that is seldom experienced. And, truth be known, none before that moment had ever witnessed a mogrification outside of the abyss. The bliss of the acceptance hung in the air, as certain colors dissipated at different energies. Red, with its longest vibration, lingered, which turned the bluish light of transmography slightly lavender. Within the red acceptance resided all of the shared memories from Jacob and Noah's childhood. As they passed through Marley's thoughts, tears of personal loss overwhelmed him. His task of outreach had been fulfilled, yet the sorrow of the permanent loss of his brother bothered him. However, he realized this was of his own making, so he accepted the emotional dread. As the fog of colored acceptance evaporated, Jacob turned from the pool of broken spirits to face the dam of disconnected parts. "It is time to get you home, Ebenezer." "Really? So soon?" The 2 men looked at each other, then chuckled at the thought of a quick escape. "Time is personal in transmography." "Time is dreamlike here. Each moment seems to exist within its own occasion." Marley paused to find the words, but the concept within his thoughts could never produce the desired conversation that would create an understanding of transmography's present moment. So, rather than try, he just declared, "I think we should pass through the dam of disconnected parts. It will reduce our travel time by at least 75%. "I do not feel that is safe." Looking toward the apex of the crater of severed spirits, Scrooge added, "However, I do not want to loiter here either." "You never had any trouble collecting alms for the pool. It appears that Apurto blessed you with some kind of invincible energy." "I'm not sure of that, Jacob." "I did secure a couple of fire twirlers while walking to the pool. I will not allow the skeletons to grab you." "Well, I know you will at least try," Scrooge said, in an attempt to convince himself. With that, he stepped into the enormity of the dam. Its massive scale haunted his human perceptions, with its millions of skeletal limbs grasping and kicking at the air. Succeeding at nothing but motion, the spindly fingers and feet struggled for significance.